Good afternoon, everybody. So, you've seen today we're talking about ransomware. We had a session yesterday where at least myself and Jurgen talked. I think we talked about how important basics are, and that's what we'll talk today about ransomware and survey. How we can get the basics right. Once we get the basics right, I think the half battle is won. Strategy is built, and we know what to do. So today, before I get into what we can do, ransomware, what strategies are there, we'll talk about what is ransomware. So many of you might be aware, but let's start with that. Let's set basics first, right? So, Park and Indra, I think we'll start with you. Can you please talk to our audience about what is ransomware and how it works?
Thanks, Yogesh, for the questions. So basically, ransomware is malware that is designed to deny the user to access their own file on their own system. So by doing the encryption of those files, then once everything is actually encrypted, then the victim will have to pay some ransom before they can access the file. So that's basically the simple definition of ransomware.
So it's a malware which actually asks for ransom. That's what it's
Exactly.
Thank you. Pak Teguh, so what are the trends of ransomware attacks in Indonesia? I think in many presentations we have seen what kind of attacks are going on, who's attacking, where, how they implement these attacks. Now, specific to ransomware, what are the trends of ransomware attacks in Indonesia in the last year or two?
Yes. Thank you. Yes. Okay. If we're speaking about how the attacks of ransomware, from the recent years, so the increments, maybe speaking Indonesia. Okay. Saya mungkin bisa tadi yang ditanya juga setelah seberapa impact dan trennya sih sebenarnya ransomware itu di Indonesia. So kalau kita bicara bahwa trennya luar biasa sekali. Kalau kita lihat dari mungkin ada Mas Obrian dari presentasi tentang IoT dan BSSN juga lakukan pemantauan gitu ya. Tahun lalu kita punya sekitar 2,7 juta attack dari ransomware. We have 2.7 million attack of ransomware to Asia, Southeast Asia. So half of them, like 1.3 million, is from Indonesia. So Indonesia has been a victim for 1.3 attack of ransomware. So from this number, we see that if we see the recent year, the start of this 2022, we have kita juga punya mungkin kejadian 2 tahun setahun ini ya, awal tahun itu ada satu lembaga negara yang sangat krusial sekali gitu ya, di sektor finansial itu juga terkena ransomware kalau kita bicara berita. So we have the Indonesian one of the regulatory have the attack to ransomware, and then if we talking about the 2017, the first time by the ransomware by the WannaCry, there's two big hospital in Indonesia have to shut down their service because the ransomware. So I think this is very massive attack. So we have to get ready for this new phenomenon. So we have to think that there's organization, someone that take advantage by giving a suffer to the victims. Thank you.
Great. So we understand the trends now. I think all the attacks we see today, maybe all the new attacks, these are not actually new. They stay for a long time, right? But maybe now the frequency of the attacks have gone high. Same like ransomware, I think we started in the 1960s. But talking in the context today, so what are the common attack patterns observed in external cyber threat landscape?
Yeah, so attack patterns that you see mostly in the region, or at least in the global context, is that it always starts with phishing. And before phishing, it was mostly, the first impression most people got is with WannaCry. So WannaCry was a wormable ransomware that just used a Windows vulnerability that basically caused the SMB to be exploited and then push ransomware. So that seems to be all patched and managed. And because of that, they basically moved around, and now they focus on phishing first. So that's if you ask me, how do they get in? Phishing is the number one thing. Now, it is more nuanced as you get more detailed in the threat modeling, specifically the attacker-centric threat modeling, where you get into an abstraction layer where you say, there's actually attackers that are doing an exploitation directly against your web server, or they're trying to get in any form of server you have, or something that's publicly exposed. They get into that server and try to do lateral movement into at the heart of your network, which is your Active Directory. Because once they get there, they can push it out in the rest of the network. So that's the general attack pattern. Now there's other avenues as well, like getting on the dark net, getting an info stealer, use that as an entry into the network, use some leaked username and passwords, which is very prevalent in the last year in Indonesia. You can go on the dark net and buy a username and password or a credential or access to a company that is sold by another threat actor. So there's a lot of avenues nowadays that are taken to get to the same entry point, which is the execution of ransomware onto the network. So that would be my general assessment of the attack patterns.
Right, thanks, Jurgen. See, I think that we struggle to identify our critical businesses, so we don't know what to protect. Right? So we didn't talk about how we can identify these businesses, perhaps how we can protect these, right? So the next question is a part of win. So what are the challenges in protecting the critical business aspects from ransomware?
Okay, thank you. I try to answer this question combined in English and in Bahasa. So our problem here, or maybe in my company, is because culture or security awareness is still maybe so. So our main program in internal is in one side is to let's say enroll some training from very basic security awareness to the advanced one. In other side, we make a data classification rule, so we know which data that should be only in internal side and which data that can be used in external application. So katakan kami di Telkom itu isunya adalah karena kami perusahaan yang punya customer data pelanggan, gitu ya. Sementara data pelanggan ini juga kadang digunakan untuk customer experience ketika kami harus kontak mereka dan sebagainya. Mungkin belum lama dengar juga ya yang isu tentang data salah satu layanan kami. Salah satu caranya adalah dengan buat training awareness di internal Telkom agar pegawai itu tahu mana data-data yang bisa diekspos dan mana yang tidak. Nah, di sisi lain ada peraturan tentang klasifikasi data sehingga treatment terhadap data-data tadi dilakukan sesuai dengan model datanya. And so the third one is implement monitoring and also the special team that respond when some internal incident maybe appear and also report it to this task force. Thank you.
Right, thank you, Pak Edwin. I think from the key points, I think basics is culture. And that's what I think missing in many organizations, that's security culture. Now we want to build new products but not ignore security. I think we have to keep security in mind. Good point, thank you. Pak Indra. So we know what's ransomware, we know what are the trends, we know perhaps we have to identify critical systems. Now, what should be the mitigation strategy of an organization to protect themselves from ransomware attacks, right? Controls required perhaps from preventive and detective perspective and response perspective. So I know this is quite a broad question, but yeah, with your experience, please help us.
Okay, so basically before we go with the mitigation, we start with the preventive detective action first. What we should do, right? The first thing that we need to do is basically to utilize the best practice. Meaning that one of them is this: we should have educate our people, educate our employees with cybersecurity awareness and training program. Okay. The second thing is we should have a good backup, a regular backup. Nowadays, backup we don't have to use a USB drive. We can use a cloud-based backup. Right? Even our mobile is using now either Google Drive or iCloud. Right? The third is that we need to ensure in our organization, our company is security patching must be updated. That is the most important thing in our organization. The other thing is that for certain account, right, or even user account, we need to ensure that multiple factor, the authentication must be applied. That is very important. So we know that we are not, if somebody is trying to steal our account, we get notified immediately. So we can try to avoid that. So mitigation, like for example, based on my experience in the company, right? So we had attacked by the ransomware few months ago. Okay. So what we did first is actually we unplugged all the anything that we know that, okay, for example, that's affected by the ransomware unplugged from the network. We want to stop the distribution of the ransomware immediately and keep it on. Okay. Then if you have a backup, we're going to use it later on. Okay. Then we check. We need to check out actually the ransomware that hitting our organization or our infrastructure. Okay. Then if let's say we can't say anything, then check on the website if they say it is hidden at first. Then looking for help. Last but not least, if you have a good backup, just swap it out and tell me the good backup that we have. So that would be my answer.
Right, I think that again touches the basics, right? Talking about defense in depth, how different layers of technology can be protected from ransomware. Plus, I think the key point you touched is education, which again gels with the culture, so we get the basics right. So we have so many security models in place, let's say NIST, FISMA, FEMA, we have regulations in place, but still we see these attacks are happening. Again, ransomware are happening. So we have protection, we have literally defense in depth, or the buzzwords like zero trust. We are following that. Still, those attacks happen, right? So I think my question is next to perhaps all of you, we're going one by one. So what is the role of government, private sector, and research institutions in protecting organizations from ransomware? Starting with you, Jurgen.
Yeah. So the problem currently, what I observe as a head of CTI, is that I need, in the situation in Indonesia where a breach happens or some form of ransomware incident, the first thing I need is IOCs, API-IOCs, and ideally directly from the victim. Extremely hard to get. It's all about who knows who, and sometimes they don't want to disclose because then you're admitting that you have been breached. And because of that, it's very hard to do intelligence sharing among the community. And my idea was, okay, let's bring everybody together and do it together. But it's very hard when, mostly when the government is helping with that people don't want to report in a channel where the government is present because they are obligated to report any form of impact or incident to other government entities that might be part, or they are part of the oversight and regulated entities, which increases risk in terms of a risk and compliance point of view, which doesn't stimulate the sharing of intelligence. So I really call hard for a non-profit entity that's neutral, not government aligned, that facilitates intelligence sharing in Indonesia. So that will be probably my point.
Sharing data, getting to know what's happening, how it's happening. Okay, great. What's your take on this, Teguh?
Okay, from my perspective, if we're talking about cyber attacks, cyber crimes, we have to think that we are as one ecosystem between the governments, between the private sector, between the research center and something that's okay. So the first one is that how we see from the standpoint of the government. So from my side, government is an institution to protect and to serve the citizens and also the private sector. So the first one is that governments provide the education system and awareness to the citizen, to the private sector, say that okay, this is dangers of the ransomware. What subject to reason now? And then second, the other thing is that governments provide the extensive mitigation, and the others is that to give the citizens protection. And the other thing is for the law enforcement. We know that nowadays di Indonesia, sekarang kalau kita lihat di Indonesia bahwa orang nggak akan peduli kalau itu nggak ada ruginya secara finansial. Jadi kalau if we talking from the perspective now, cybercrime will be arise very big issue if there's something that impacted the financial. But now we never thinking about if someone is creating a malware, someone is creating ransomware, how we can punish this group of people. Law enforcementnya rendah banget karena kita menganggap bahwa ransomware itu ya seorang yang cuma iseng dan melakukan kejahatan gitu. Tapi sebenarnya itulah bahayanya bahwa orang ini bisa mengakibatkan yang seperti kita udah cerita, rumah sakit itu bisa nggak jalan gitu. Pada saat data pasiennya itu lagi keblok, so hospital cannot running and suspended because of patient data is attacked by the ransomware. Okay. The other thing is the private sector. Private sector is the pillar. We know that they have the more technology to protect from ransomware. So the private sector doing the mitigation from the side of the people, process, and technology. They have the capability of this. Then the last one is research center. I think research center we can collaborate with the more research center from the educational, like the university or the private. The freelance cybersecurity analyst and others. So we create the ecosystem where we can protect our common responsibility. That's from us.
Very comprehensive. Thank you very much. Indra, what's your take? What should we do?
Well, I would talk about from the private sector, which is what I'm working on. So basically, we need to keep improving our infrastructure. We need to have some investment on that, and we need to keep reviewing because we never know whether the solution that we have today, is actually still sufficient to prevent the problem from the ransomware attack, right? So that's what we are doing. We keep doing some improvement. We do some, having a discussion with certain parties. Then from there, we know that what needs to be improved on our side. That's how we can protect that one. The second is that we need to ensure that also, if let's say there's any issues or we hear something that, for example, attacked by the ransomware, then we need to ensure that we also inform other parties to let them know, we have a situation, and then what will be the mitigation, and then this is the report, and how much damage that will cause. So, like the government, like here, the SSN, they will understand, they will know that, there's some information here, that we can work together, just like Pak said, so we can work together to help us out.
Collaboration is the key. Yeah. So before my next question, I think I'll start with a small story. Right? So a company was attacked using ransomware, and obviously they were afraid what to do. They didn't know what to do. They had a good CTI head, just like Jurgen, who had somebody else who was a good bandwidth reverse engineer. He tried a password, and data was unencrypted. They came out of the attack. He used a default password, which is normally given to people who buy ransomware as service, right? So the attacker did not change the password. Just kept the same password. So I think on those lines, coming to Park Edwin. So what is ransomware as service, right? Before people had to write their own vendors, right? Now they can just go and buy, and they're quite cheap, right? So what is ransomware as service, and how is changing the threat landscape, not just Indonesia overall?
Okay, so actually when I heard this idea the first time, it is very interesting because maybe we familiar with platform as a service, infrastructure as a service, but this thing is about security attack that changed to be kind of service. So with this one, in this service, change the landscape, the threat landscape, especially for the ransomware things, because someone who has extra money, they can pay to someone or teams that provide this service. Currently, we can find this service spread out in the what we call it dark web. also proposed in some specific forum. So it means that currently the teams or the person who have ability to do ransomware attack, they over to someone can pay their service to do ransomware attack. So it means that other than only create this ecosystem bigger, also for the law enforcer, they have to trace more detail when this attack happen. So ini sudah ada case juga di beberapa tempat di mana ketika didetailkan atau didalami, ketemunya tuh hanya pelakunya, padahal yang membayar kejahatan ini, ransomware attack ini adalah orang yang punya extra cost untuk berbagai keperluan ya, untuk benar-benar mencuri data atau tapi mesti rata-rata untuk keperluan mendapatkan bayaran. Dan yang menarik bahwa kadang-kadang action ini dilakukan oleh orang yang paham dulu di suatu perusahaan ini ada datanya yang bagus ini loh, atau ada data pentingnya ini tadi ya critical business tadi. Nah, kalau itu di-tag mau nggak mau perusahaan itu harus membayar. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So ransomware as a service is a real threat. What's your view on ransomware as a service? How is it changing the landscape?
Yeah, so maybe tie it in later. The question that will come up. There's A players, B players, and C players in the threat landscape actively using ransomware. And I think those are giving way for the C players to really, that are non-technical savvy, really to get that RAS service, right, the ransomware as a service off the shelf, and try to push it at any angle they can. And that might utilize also this, people talking about that there's insider threats in companies that are offered money to execute ransomware. So that gives way to, maybe if you don't know how to hack or attack a company, you can basically get people that use this angle, which is a big worry point for most companies, because if you have an insider and they get a pay cut from the ransom, it's very alerting in certain countries or contexts to get someone to play with their game. So yeah.
Very ABC. The guy I think who did not change the default password, he was C for sure. Thank you. So again, next question is to you. I think which connects with this well. So what are the common threat tactics they utilize ransomware in the current cybersecurity landscape?
Yeah, so coming back to the model of A players, B players, and C players, if you think about A players, those are the ones that get the limelight, the spotlight on them. And the reason why that is because they have a nice, beautiful web page that they put their victims on. So they will say, okay, this is a brand new victim, and we got the data, and please pay us ransom, or not. In the next coming days, we're leaking more data. So those organizations, I would call them, they're basically like companies, and they have customer support. And if you go into their organizational structure, they have onboarders, trainers, they have multiple teams that have multiple specialists, including pen testers, escalation, like reverse escalation experts, malware, reverse engineers, and open source intelligence gathering guys. So they all have separate teams with our own targets, and they all need to make money because it's a business, right? So these are highly mature. These are the A players of the environment. Then you go to the B players. These are people that have either built their own ransomware in certain shape or form, but they don't want to be so public. They're more low key, and they go maybe a little more targeted, and they have a smaller operation. And then you go to the C players, as I mentioned earlier. These people are generally more, try to use what's on the field, target it, and then try to get something done with a very limited amount of resources. So that, I would say, are the three major categories of players. The challenge with this always is that I know how complex all these threat actors behave in certain ways, and nobody has really the resources to go very deep into this in threat model analysis. So there's a lot of public resources available, and you can use the basics of a general threat model and map your defenses against that, as Indra mentioned earlier.
Great, thanks, Jurgen. So I think in all of our experience, we see different types of vulnerabilities, different types of perhaps methods being used, different types of attacks, right? Every organization, depending on your business types, depending on how critical data you have, and how you were built, cloud native or not, we have different experiences. Right? But keeping that in mind, what are the common vulnerabilities in the attack surface that are taken advantage of when launching a ransomware attack? So starting with you, Park Edwin.
Yeah.
So what are the common vulnerabilities I think which you think can be utilized in your organization?
Yeah. So rather than only what we call it normal team or normal person that utilize these vulnerabilities, when this vulnerabilities issue spread up in forums or in discussion room, yeah. So any what we call it a newbie of this, they can also try to send the let's say email phishing with ransomware inside. Just try to just try to and in some in company that many employees interact with this let's say email or a task what we call it task email or task. So they may be do something click the emails or access the file and they do something bad in their file storage. But in this time when file storage also synchronized with something important with company file storage, they can do something bad. Even for the first time, they do only for their personal things, but they can do something bad to organization or to company. That's why one of the key features to defend from this kind of habit is versioning, is file versioning. We do it in discipline, let's say in DevSecOps terminology to create application or to create web. One of the key features in DevSecOps things is versioning, file versioning. So that's one of our effort to try to defend from maybe some user habit when we access the file that maybe can make a big damage to the organization.
Right, I think we're to reduce the surface there, attack surface, right? Teguh, what's your take? So it's not, maybe I said it wrongly before, it's not in your organization, obviously, you've been told about that. But common vulnerabilities in the attack surface that are taken advantage of when launching a ransomware attack.
Yes. From my perspective is if we see what the common vulnerability of surface that can be at the point of the ransomware, every aspect can be there. First one is that people, non-aware people. We know that people is the weakest weakest link on the chains of the information security. So people is involved in emotionally can easily trust others. That's the one of the vulnerable thing that can be at the point of the ransomware. The second one is the technology also there, because we prefer to do the misconfiguration, default configuration, bulky system, something that never be maintained. We just trust first set, and we hope it will run smoothly. The last thing is the process. The process, we prefer, sometimes we always think that our process is always perfect, but the good process is something that monitored and always be reviewed. So I think, from my perspective, the common vulnerabilities, the first one is the people, the second one is technology, the third one is process. All of these things can be the attack vector of the ransomware. So we have to be aware of this. Thank you.
Thank you. Jurgen, what do you think?
Yeah, I can add to that. So I would just roll up the common vulnerabilities that are, I guess, a little bit more, well, they're actually there and they're quite obvious. So when we think about ransomware, sometimes people just think of phishing email or some more of the things that you guys talked about. But in the startup space, there's a lot of usage of open source databases like Elasticsearch or MongoDB. And by default, they don't provide a lot of security just because historically the developers didn't really give a lot of attention to it. So there's a lot of people that just think, oh, I'm just going to deploy this database here. And well, it's publicly listed on the internet, and there's actually scripts going around constantly deploying ransomware everywhere. So they will get all your Elasticsearch database, either pull your entire data, delete it, and hold it for ransom, or just try to encrypt it in some shape or form. So this is a very common pattern, but it's so common that they have active scripts running it. So you just turn on the service and you just wait, and it will happen. So this is a little bit of a different pattern.
Right. I think want to know all the pattern you guys are talking about, getting into defense in depth. We look at every layer. It's not just one pattern. Parker, what do you think? What are your views?
Okay, so looking at this situation, looking at this condition, I'm trying to repeating what Yogesh actually said. But there are three pillars, right? It's processes, policies, okay, people, and the technology, right? So yes, just like we mentioned before, that we talked about it, right? Technology is there, right? So people is sometimes we have a lot of people call I normally call it very ignorant people, and there's VIPs where they know what they're doing. They think they know what they're doing. So this is something that we need to keep educating people. We need to let them know, let them understand what is actually the impact if you do this. Right? So education in terms of cybersecurity is so much.
Awareness, education, culture, defense, and then covering all basics. I think that leaves us with a good follow-up question. Jurgen, humans we talk about, right? So humans are the center of cybersecurity. They are the targets. They have the solution. We're building everything, right? So for the companies defending against zero-day attacks, now you see these ransomwares. Not all of them could be zero-day attacks, right? Because 0 days are taking issues for everybody. That's what we're concerned, right? So zero-day attacks and ransomware. How can they create a superior and simplified security experience for their entire ecosystem? The ecosystem could be my customers, my vendors, right? My employees, from the endpoint to cloud, and make the human element part of the solution, not simply simplifying everything.
Yeah, so that's a very interesting, complex question. So what you're trying to do here probably is how do we find the balance between the functional use of technology, but also security with the user at the center of this. So yeah, I hate to use the buzzword, but yeah, zero trust is something that is probably up that alley. So when I say zero trust, I'm talking about defense in depth on every layer and more intimate than we did previously. Not only like, oh, I have my Active Directory, I put a perimeter around it, and that's it. No, we go on the user level. We do device aware authentication, 2FA. These are things that are super intimate to the user itself. It's something you have with your phone to authenticate. So that kind of approach will definitely help. And also just moving away from this on-prem stuff that seems to be constantly the problem of, that keeps on continuing, that nobody knows where all their hardware is. And if you move that all to the cloud, and you have basically everything integrated with one single sign-on, all mostly SaaS services, things become very simple and very convenient because you just have one device, I log in everywhere, I get it, I have by default a lot of 2FA security, even if my password is stolen. And I think that's the pathway forward, using a cloud-centric, zero trust, in this case defense and depth, very intimately integrated among your entire tech stack. And that will be the most convenient for your users, will give you the most flexibility, and gives you also, in my opinion, still the most security, because doing it all yourself is just not workable in, well, we know how complex the topic is. So that would be probably my simplest answer to the complex question. Yeah.
A very broad question. We logically ask you to make a strategy for us. So I think with your experiences, we have talked so many things which could be complex in people's minds. So for the audience's perspective, for the audience's benefit, if we have to leave them with a couple of takeaways, let's say, from the session, right? So what are the one or two most important things they should keep in mind when it comes to ransomware? Starting with you, Martin.
Well, nowadays there's a lot of website that we can access, right? So as a user, okay, even though we are not tech savvy, at least we know what we are doing when we accessing to the website, because we never know whether it is. We also need to be what we call it concerned, or we need to really know that the website that we are accessing is included in legitimate access. Okay, and not only that, we also need to ensure that, let's say we want to download something, some software, some application, we need to ensure we have to download from the legitimate website, not from any minor site that we can do. That's actually what happened with one of my friends couple weeks ago, basically. So he tried to download the Microsoft Office, but from other sources, right? So what happened was that after he downloaded, he installed, and then all the data basically is become encrypted.
Basics again.
Yeah, exactly. It's again user.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Martin. Very good.
Yes, to tie on the basics, right? That's mostly the message with any kind of conference you go to, the basics first. So to tie into that and build on top of that, I would take that the position of, at GoTo, we believe GoTo or Royal, we go together, we work together. And since we have seen so many challenges now in the cybersecurity landscape in Indonesia, info stealers that were so prevalent the last year, micro-tick routers being abused for major DDoS attacks, and ransomware again being part of that mix, I think the major solution is just work together, get connected, and share intelligence wherever possible within the next ransomware attack that might come that would be maybe not conventional. Help each other out, make the IOCs be proactive. I know people don't want to admit they're a breach, but you can just give it without context, right? You can just say these are IOCs and don't ask me more about it, right? Try to work together, so that would be probably on top of your argument of the basics. So.
Thank you, Jurgen. Teguh, one or two takeaways for us.
Okay, I think what I want to talk is already covered by Edwin and also Jurgen's, but I want to add more. One thing is that always expect something worse. Okay, in facing such kind of the cyber attack like ransomware or malware or anything, so we have to prepare for the worst. Okay, and then from our perspective, so we always try, if we have something the valuable data or we think that's the importance, is always backup this one. So, we never know. Kita nggak pernah tahu kapan zero days-nya datang, kapan attack-nya datang. Tapi kalau kita selalu berpikir bahwa kita backup datanya, even pada saat itu datang attack-nya dan kita nggak siap, kita selalu punya backup. Dan we always have the backup plan, we have the backup data, and there are things that be disciplined. I mean, the weakest, just I said that the weakest thing in cybersecurity is people say when we trust, involved in emotionally to about some things, we always trust, and then this will be the broken things. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Edwin, what's your view?
Yeah. Okay. So because a lot of speakers says about human factor, so we try to. I think we have to try to view this one from customer or user side, because sometimes security things is kind of like alien for many person. So I read one book from Japan government. They try to inform security things by a very popular way. Maybe this is the simple way, but reach to the customer, try to inform ransomware thing or ransomware attack by popular way. Because in this stage, we need to inform this kind of ransomware thing by very simple way. So that many people will try to adopt the security culture, then can work together to prevent from ransomware. Thank you.
Great. I think we have covered the basics today. defense and depth, security awareness, education, role of governments, institutions, right? Sharing data. So yeah, thank you very much for your thoughts. I think we have definitely gained something. Thank you very much.